Hey guys, IcyCat here with another operator profiling guide, this time for KAID. I'll go over his weapons, Electroclaw gadget, and the best ways to use him, plus tips and tricks and a few surprises you might not have known about him. This time we've got KAID, the new Moroccan defender that comes with Operation Wind Bastion. He's a heavy 1-speed, 3-armor operator, and his special gadget is the Electroclaw. We'll begin by taking a look at his weapons loadout. First is the AUG A3 SMG. It does 27 damage with a 31-round magazine and a rate of fire of 700. It's a low-damage SMG with no ACOG option despite being on a heavy 1-speed operator. The harder-hitting option is the TCSG-12 shotgun. It's semi-automatic with a 10-round magazine feed and does 84 points of damage. Interesting thing about it is that it uses a shotgun slug instead of 12-gauge buckshot that most other shotguns use. Vigil and Dokkaebi use the only other shotgun in the game that fires slug rounds so far, but with that gun having the limitation of 2 shots before needing to reload, KAID's shotgun is much more accessible. You can put an ACOG on it and even a beefy suppressor if you want. Up close, this makes respectable holes in walls, but if you back it off a bit to the point that the damage fall-off begins, then it will just land large bullet holes in the walls instead. Even though it doesn't fire buckshot, you can still open hatches with it, but it takes a lot more rounds to get the job done. His sidearm is the 44 mag semi-auto. This beast hits with 74 damage, though it does have a limited 7-round magazine before reloading. Just like Nomad, it has a big scope on top. It's really easy to use, and despite getting a recoil nerf already during the test server, it's still very simple to consistently land shots without any trouble. I expect this will probably get a heavier recoil nerf at some point down the road, but for now it's almost as good as a primary weapon. His secondary gadgets are a choice between barbed wire or impact grenades. You can take impacts if you want, but seeing as how barbed wire is so useful to his core ability, that will be my standard recommendation almost universally, unless you know the rest of your team already has barbed wire covered. As noted before, his special ability is the Electroclaw, which in simplest terms works like an area of effect Bandit battery that can be thrown instead of just placed on the floor. His gadget can electrify reinforced metal walls, deployable shields, and barbed wire. Obviously, any mirror window placed on a metal wall would be protected in the same way as Bandit's batteries would as well. Because he can throw the Electroclaw, he can also do one other thing that Bandit can't. He can toss it on the underside of reinforced metal hatches and electrify them from below, giving defenders the first real direct way to defend hatches from thermite and Hibana. Previously, you had to be lucky enough to get one of the very few objective sites in the game that may have had a counter or object in just the right spot to place a mute jammer that might cover enough of the hatch from below. Now those placements don't matter, so you can use it on any hatch you want to with this tool. There was also Maestro for protecting hatches, but once you start shooting with it, it's pretty easy to deny it, because then they can just aim at your turret while they finish the job they started, if they didn't destroy it some other way first, because this gadget is actually something you have to have above the trapdoor, whereas the Electroclaw can sit safely below it. Now, he only gets 2 of these devices. Initially, it was 3 during the test server phase, but they lowered it. Part of the reason was to make more of a choice between him and Bandit, but another part of it is that his gadget can electrify multiple surfaces at a time, and 3 gave him too much utility at once. When he throws the Electroclaw on a surface, you see a medium-sized white sphere pop up. Only KAID can see this, not any of the other defenders. Any valid metallic objects that intersect that sphere will be electrified. The only limit on objects electrified is how many you can fit within this area of effect. As you can see here, just one device can electrify these 2 walls, 2 barbed wire piles, and a deployable shield. Even more barbed wire could have been put on the other side of this wall too if you wanted, and it would still be powered by one single device. KAID serves as an indirect counter to Maverick. He can't stop him from cutting holes in walls. Maverick can still safely do that from a few feet away without taking contact damage, but he does make it harder for Maverick to do his job in some smaller, more indirect ways, even if he can't outright prevent him. First is that Maverick would know exactly where to make holes to take out devices. A mute jammer would be in the middle of a panel or in the middle of 2 panels. A Bandit battery would be in the center of any given panel. He would know right where to make a hole to destroy them. Since the Electroclaw can be thrown anywhere, Maverick has no idea where to look unless he drones it out first. In fact, it may not even be in a spot he could even reach at all to disable it if it's high enough. The second way Maverick's job is made a little harder by KAID is that even if he cuts a hole in a wall big enough to crawl through, an electrical charge still conducts across the space the material occupied, and anyone crossing this takes 3 points of damage per second while doing so. Crouch walking is slow enough to take some minor damage doing this, and crawling through a smaller hole would be even more damage. Like I said, not exactly a hard counter to Maverick, but it does make some aspects of his job a little more difficult. Oddly enough, this seems to not stop a drone from going through for some reason, even though it would be if it physically contacted the electrical metal wall. Just like Bandit, electrified barbed wire also destroys drones on contact, as would contact with an electrified shield or hatch. The cool thing about this is that you may not be able to do anything about it with a twitch if the Electroclaw is hidden safely on the other side. The major weakness to using Bandit to electrify his barbed wire was that the big battery just sat right in the middle of the spool of wire, just begging to be shot. By taking the device out of the way, you can use creative placements to protect the gadget. There's other ways you can do this too. For instance, if you make a hole in the floor, you can actually throw the Electroclaw inside it, and it will sit cleanly below the height of the floor. Once you cover it up with barbed wire, it becomes all but invisible, and if you can't see it, you can't shoot it. Similarly, you could make holes in walls and hide them that way if that works better for you too, but be careful because a reinforced wall being placed on that section will instantly destroy it. Electrified barbed wire can be taken out by melee attacks, though you will take 3 points of contact damage per strike. Additionally, explosives can take it out if the area of effect hits it. There's also a way to electrify frost traps, kind of. Because you can electrify anything within the white placement orb's reach, this effect does pass through floors too, meaning you can actually electrify from below. Now, you can't actually electrify a frost trap directly, but it won't be destroyed if it sits on top of a metal hatch that's being charged. This means the trap would go off as it normally would, but now the victim is lying in a fixed position on an electrified surface and will take damage until they die in short order. This works with barbed wire too. Place a trap inside a pile of barbed wire and then electrify it from below. You can either open up a little hole in the ceiling to really hide it, or you can just throw it up there in the open. Either way works. That energy will pass through the floor into the barbed wire above, and if the trap is activated, it's going to kill whoever's stuck in it pretty quickly. One thing that will not work no matter what you do though is castle barricades. Kevlar is a super high tensile synthetic fiber and does not conduct electricity usually. Sorry, there's no way to protect the door unless you count placing some electrified barbed wire at the base of the panel as protection from people walking up to it to place devices. It won't stop them, but at least they'd take a few points of damage trying. But that's as close as you can get to electrifying anything on a castle door. Because it has a much slower activation time as compared to batteries, you can't bandit trick with this thing, unless the thermite just lets the exothermic charge sit there for a really long time before they activate it, which isn't very likely. If you're fast though, you can actually manage to stop Hibana pellets from burning through. The timing is close if she activates them as fast as she can. You more or less have to be pretty much ready for it, but it is possible. His gadget deployment just doesn't activate quickly enough to be very good at trying to do bandit tricking. So how do you counter the Electroclaw? Well, other than simply shooting it or blowing it up, there's several direct counters. The first is IQ. She can see its exact position, and if it's from an angle with a soft surface, she can safely shoot it out. This works equally well from above or below too, as long as there's an unobstructed soft breach surface as the only thing in between the line of sight. Twitch works great, and should have the range to hit even high up targets for the most part, though some of those protected shock wires may make it a challenge for her drone to even get in to take the shot. The strongest counter is probably going to be Thatcher. An EMP grenade will outright destroy the device even when the Electroclaw is placed way up on top or even above the metal walls. The EMP still will hit high enough to take it out. Because EMP grenades are shielded, they are not damaged by electrified surfaces, so even landing the grenade in a pool of shock wire won't stop it from going off. Jaeger is still your best bet for disabling the grenades before they detonate. Now, your fellow defenders will also need to be careful of where they place their gadgets. There's nothing new here, it's the same as it is with Bandit. If a Bandit battery would have destroyed the friendly gadget, so will the Electroclaw. So don't go tossing things inside of Shockwire and expecting it to not get destroyed, unless it was also immune to batteries too, like the frost traps. Be especially considerate of your mute mains. If a surface is already jammed and you throw an Electroclaw and that shared surface affects the jam surface, you'll take out that friendly jammer too. So the big question here that most people have is, why would I ever take Bandit if KAID's gadget does the same thing, but better? Well, there's pros and cons to each selection. KAID only has 2 devices to Bandit's 4. Bandit has the option to properly Bandit trick, but KAID can't really do it versus Thermite and can only just barely do it against Hibana if he's ready for it. Bandit has an arguably better SMG, and the shotguns couldn't be more different if you tried. Bandit has the fast-firing M870 with a shorter range but wide coverage, and the TCSG-12 is only a single slug shot per trigger pull, but makes up for the lack of spread with long range and accuracy. Probably the biggest difference, though, is that KAID is slow and noisy. He's not going anywhere fast. But Bandit? He's a lightning 3-speed and can rotate all over the map before the attackers know what hit them. It's all going to come down to your playstyle and which one fits you better. That said, KAID brings some really interesting versatility to the table and offers some new variations to try out. The most interesting thing is that there's finally a way to directly protect hatches for the defenders, a tool no one else on the roster can arguably specialize in. As mentioned before, Maestro could kind of do that role, but his turret would have to be left exposed above the hatch in order to do the job, and here the hatch can be defended from the safety of the objective room. Well, that wraps up this operator profile for KAID. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe. Be sure to click that notification button so you're alerted as soon as I make new content available. You can also follow me at IcyCat25 on either Facebook or Twitter. Thanks a lot for watching, everybody. We'll see you next time.